Sam, great to have you here. How's life as full-time portfolio manager, part-time trigonometry teacher going?
Loving it, thanks, Frank.
Sam, you obviously have been talking to a whole bunch of your management teams while we have been on lockdown. What are the things you're observing from them? What are you discussing? What are they telling you about the state of the world?
Yeah, I think the main takeaway for me there, Frank, is our companies are getting sick of us. So our process has really gone into overdrive. We've spoken to our companies, not just our companies, but our companies' competitors, their suppliers and their customers more than 100 times in the last 6 weeks. So that's 4 to 5 times if you think about our global property infrastructure portfolio and our New Zealand portfolio. So our process has gone to overdrive there. And 4 questions for these guys. Number 1 is, most importantly, how are you ensuring the safety of your team? Secondly, how is your liquidity situation or your balance sheet? Thirdly, what's a potential bear, base and bull outcome for revenues and profits during this crisis and out the other side of it? And fourthly, and this is a very important question, is when we do come out the other side, how do we ensure that we are better positioned than our competitors?
And if you were to think about sort of the themes and the kind of commonalities between companies, are there kind of ideas or themes emerging in those conversations?
Just taking number 4, which is a really important question, because we all know it is dark before the dawn. Companies and investors tend to focus on that sort of bearish picture right in front of them. It's really interesting talking to companies like Fisher & Paykel Healthcare, A2 and Xero, which are some of our biggest positions, and they're super focused on that question number 4, which is how do we come out the other side of this better position than our competitors?
Yeah, great companies use crises as opportunities to become even better, don't they? That speaks to something I think that's really central to our investment process, which is around this idea of leadership. And I'm interested in your reflections on how New Zealand's best leaders have been handling this crisis. What's been in their thinking, and what do you think has marked out the great leaders from people that possibly aren't handling it quite so well?
Yeah, I won't talk so much about the companies that are not handling it well, but I'll definitely talk about the companies that are handling it very well. So firstly, I think the best leaders are compassionate. So they're really looking after their teams in this environment. And it shouldn't come as much of a surprise to our investors that Mainfreight's team are really proud to be working for Mainfreight during this period. They're stepping up. They're proud to be keeping goods and services flowing for not just New Zealand, but the globe. So I think compassion is important. Secondly, calmness. Calmness is always important as a business leader, but it's especially important right now. And I think our best companies are showing exceptional calmness under pressure. And thirdly, being prepared. So if we take Somerset, for example, a core part of their DNA is stress testing their earnings and balance sheets, because they are subject to the vagaries of a property market, which they can't control. So the key takeaway for us there was very early on in this crisis, we got a really good handle on the fact that Somerset's balance sheet could withstand a very prolonged and bearish crisis.
Mainfreight's often been a company that's been cited by us, and I think more broadly in the New Zealand's financial press, as a great example of leadership, both from the board through Don Braid's day-to-day leadership. They updated the market about the outlook for their business and how things are tracking so far. Probably a good time to reflect on that, and I guess that's where the rubber meets the road. Great leadership delivers amazing results, and how has Mainfreight been tracking through the crisis?
It was a great and detailed response to the crisis by Mainfreight, and it gave a good insight into how some of the regions around the globe, not just New Zealand, could perform. So in the first week of the crisis, the lockdown, revenues for Mainfreight are down 40% year on year in New Zealand, but 12% year on year only globally. So wow. Regions like the US and Europe are down only 7 or 8%. In New Zealand, we're in full lockdown. It's slightly more draconian than other countries, so that 40% revenue hit was there. But already we're starting to see signs of improvement there as the range of essential services is expanded. And if we want to look for a light at the end of the tunnel, like I said before, it's always dark before the dawn. Australian revenue during this period has been up 9% year on year so far, given they've only been in partial lockdown.
How have they managed to grow revenue? I mean, that almost seems impossible in this environment, right? It's an amazing result.
Well, I was just about to point out that we shouldn't assume that when New Zealand reopens that the overall economy will grow at 9%. That would be too much to hope. But Mainfreight's been taking market share through this period in Australia.
that's exactly what leadership's all about, isn't it? One of the other themes I think has been really important, and you touched on it when you talked about Somerset and its balance sheet, has been the balance sheet structure of companies, and we've seen a number of companies coming to market to raise capital. The biggest and most high profile of those, of course, is Auckland Airport with a whopper capital raise over the last couple of days. Can you just talk about how Auckland Airport made its decision and thought about its balance sheet, and how you see it positioned to weather what will be a really challenging period for that business in particular?
Due to the lockdown in New Zealand and global travel restrictions, revenue for these guys at their main aeronautical business is down almost 100% at the moment. So extremely big, that's leaving an extremely big revenue and profit hole. And they've raised $1.2 billion to mainly fill that revenue and profit hole, but also shore up their balance sheet.
How did they get that sense of scale, and has it taken risk out of this business? Are they in great shape to really manage the way through the entire challenge that coronavirus might play for that business?
If you remember back to my question 3 from earlier, which is that we asked all of our companies, which is what's the sort of bear, base and bull outcome for revenues and profits during the crisis and out the other end? What AIA have clearly said is, we don't know, but what we're going to do is raise enough capital to take any balance sheet stress off our plate or off the table, and give ourselves enough balance sheet capacity and headroom so that if this crisis continues in its current form, i.e. passenger traffic is down almost 100% for another 20 months, right up to December 2020.
Wow, yeah.
Which out to December 2021, we'll be just fine. Clearly, that's not their base case, but what they've said is, we don't know, so we're going to take that risk off the table.
Great example of leadership there. Be early, be decisive, and be very prepared for any scenario, but position yourself well to take advantage of things when and if they do improve. Let's hope we're allowed to get on planes before 2021, huh? That'd be a pretty dire thing. Fisher & Paykel Healthcare has obviously been a really interesting story through the coronavirus crisis. The technology that they can deliver to hospitals can make a real difference to the outcomes for patients. The demand for their products has really gone up. How are they managing to gear up and really help the world through this? And I mean, it's great to have a company like that in our portfolio that's actually part of the solution. How are they gearing up?
Absolutely right. We're proud to be associated with them and proud to have it as our largest position in the Kiwi portfolios. So, as you said, Frank, COVID-19 is a respiratory illness, and Fisher & Paykel Healthcare are a respiratory and humidification expert. So what they do is they keep 30% manufacturing capacity free or flexible at any point in time just for a crisis like this. So They've been able to ramp up 30% extra invasive ventilation and high flow oxygen capacity within 2 weeks to meet the demand. So like I said at the start, we're proud to be associated with Fisher & Paykel Healthcare, given they're part of the solution here.
And once again, go back to those principles of leadership that you espoused at the very beginning, and that preparedness is one of them. And I guess this is a great example of being prepared means you're able to not only save the world, but also make a dollar or two on the way, which is kind of nice for shareholders. Obviously, not all companies are quite so well positioned, and some, just by dint of what they do, have been right in the eye of the storm. Can you talk about, for those companies that have got the biggest challenges, tourism, leisure, travel, how they are handling their way? So you've talked about Auckland Airport as one example.
Mm-hmm.
Any other examples to share on that front?
Air New Zealand, clearly right in the eye of the storm. Their first port of call was the government and a large government loan. Then we've got retail companies which are right in the eye of the storm. They have debt on their balance sheets and they are not operating. So Kathmandu, like AIA or Auckland Airport, raised capital early. Now, if we talk about a company that is in our portfolio that's right in the eye of the storm, it's Vista. Mm-hmm. Almost every one of their customers, which is cinemas globally, are shut. So Vista's customer base is hurting, so is Vista. But there's two important things to remember here. Firstly, Vista's software is mission critical for a cinema. So when these cinemas do reopen, and they will, we all want to go back to the movies. I was just talking to my wife yesterday. She's desperate to go to the movies. The first, maybe it's to get out of the house, but or get away from me. But the first thing they will turn on is Vista's software. So the first thing is Vista's software is mission critical for cinemas, and secondly, the long-term story and moat around Vista's core cinema business is intact. So they're in the eye of the storm, but remember those two things.
Take that longer-term perspective, not just focus on what's going on right now. No, very, very
That's
good
right.
advice. Over recent days, and this is incredibly heartening news, I think for all of us, we've seen a real inflection down in the virus progression in parts of Europe. We're seeing some very good numbers in New Zealand, fingers crossed. You've talked a bit about companies positioning themselves for what comes next. Can you maybe just expand a bit on what can companies do to be well positioned for the future, and where we see the winners or losers in the New Zealand share market as we come out the other side of the lockdown that we're in right now?
I guess what gives us confidence that our portfolio companies are well positioned, before I go into kind of delineating the winners and the losers, is really a combination of three things. So firstly, we typically only invest in companies that have high quality management teams and boards. And like I said, it's been awesome to see our high quality management teams and boards stepping up to the plate in a calm and prepared manner. So that's the first point. Second point is the majority of our companies already have strong balance sheets. Like I said, some of our big positions also have defensive revenue streams there. So they are well positioned to capitalize on opportunities, as some of their competitors are going to be weaker at the back end of this. But if they don't have strong balance sheets, they're moving quickly and aggressively like Auckland Airport is. And the final point is, and this is not so much how they're preparing themselves, but it's just an inherent part of their business model, is that a lot of our companies have long runways for growth, almost irrespective of the economic backdrop. So if we take Xero, for example, their cloud accounting product is 10% penetrated globally. So the pie is going to shrink and grow in any given year, and the pie being the total stock of new businesses globally. But what's much more important is how big a slice of that pie Xero can take.
So ultimately, you're almost saying that the world pre-coronavirus, the world post-coronavirus, if you've got a quality business, if you've got a great management team, and you've got growth opportunities for years and years ahead, it's a little bit less relevant what the world looks like after and before. It's kind of business as usual for those leading companies.
I think that's right. I think that's exactly right, Frank.
Yeah, it's interesting. We always look for the secret sauce, but it's back to the same fundamental things that drive business value, right?
I think that's right.
Very good. Hey Sam, that's been a great conversation. Thank you.